slowly. There we are. Okay. So, I still feel like I don't. Okay. Anyways. Okay, so this is what happens when it times out in in Gitbot. So, what you will need to do is one of two things. One, if you're in that page, if you're in this page and you got the timeout, you can just click on Open Workspace directly. And that's totally fine. The other option is we go to gitbot.io, and in here you will see your workspace. So for each of the workspaces, you will see here information about what is a repository in GitHub that it is tied to. So in this case, it is for DrupalCon Portland, as you can see. The branch that it is running on, and also the changes that you have, okay? So we have like 152 changes in the code base. That means I haven't committed that. I should, so that we can keep the code. But that's it. Some information about Gitbot. First, well, you already know, if you have more than 30 minutes, if you go 30 minutes without accessing the workspace, it will turn off. If it is turned off for more than 24 hours, it will be added to a section down here called inactive workspaces, but you can still access it. And if you don't work on it for 14 days, it will remove it completely, and you will not be able to access or recover any data, code, or anything that was in the workspace, okay? And just, like, if you're using it constantly, that's going to be okay, but if not, then you might lose everything you have. So that's why we want to commit all the work that we have done and send it to a GitHub repository so that you can, like, still have it. So if we want to start this thing, I'm going to go to the three dots, click on Open, and that will be the same as if I had just done it from here. You can see that it picked it up automatically. So we'll close this one, I will stay in the other one. And this time, as the workspace was created already and it had everything good to go, it is going to take just a couple of seconds. In this case, I have automation set up so that when it starts, it automatically tries to start the containers. So the only issue is that it asks us here for permission to be in map. I will just say yes, and then it will finish, and we will be good to go. You can see we have the ports open. It will finish soon. There it is. We're good. And now if you go back to your site and you reload it, you should be able to say it again. Okay? So that's what we have. Now, for this one, that's fine. Remember the username and password are admin123. Or you can, in the terminal, you can do ddevdrush ULI, and that will give you a one-time login link, like this command here. Okay? Like if you run that one, you get this URL. Only thing is it is using the wrong part here, but then you can just copy the rest of it up until user and paste it in your site, like from the home page, like from here. And then that will generate the one-time login link, and you will be in. And you can change the password as well if you want. So this is the one that we have. We already created our SDC. We are invoking that one already, but we're not passing the right data. Why? Well, so far, all we have is our template that is printing the items, and it is just including the slider without anything else. But we do need to include something else. We need to pass over the data, because if we're doing it this way, it is just not going to get the dynamic data that we have in Drupal. So we need to do those changes. Now, according, yes? Issue there? Okay. 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 issue of this setup is now okay. Some issues. So you might have an error sometimes that is saying that the component is not defined or that it cannot find it. There are multiple reasons for it, okay? Well, there may be multiple reasons for it. One of them is the component was not created inside of the components folder. The folder needs to be called components in plural, and it should be in the root of the themes folder, right? So if your theme is called DrupalCon, the components folder should be inside of the DrupalCon folder directly. Not inside of templates, not inside of anything else. That's one. Then, of course, it should have the S, the folder. That's second. Third, it is possible that you created your component file, your component folder, like the slider, but then the YAML file, you called it components with an S. In that case, that's also wrong because Drupal expected to be called component YAML in singular. So it will be slider.component.yaml, okay? Another option, there is just a typo when you're invoking the component. So maybe a slider and you put an S or something like that. Or maybe the theme name, we also need to make sure that we're adding it correctly. Yet another option is that maybe you didn't install the SDC module. If the SDC module is not installed, you will also get that error. And it might have happened because maybe you went to the extend page and you found SDC. And you found SDC here, and then you clicked it, and then you click on install, but you didn't confirm and didn't notice. So it is possible that happens, okay? So you will need to go back and install it again, and you will see that after that, and you clear the cache, you get everything up and running, okay? So those are some of the reasons. Are we all good? Great, perfect. So now that we have this here, our next step is to actually make it nice. Like our slider, I'm gonna go back to my content, sorry about that. Our slider should have the cards inside of it. We don't really want to have the slider component just printing slide 1, slide 2, and slide 3, right? That doesn't make sense. We actually want the content, but we cannot put here a variable for slide 1, a variable for slide 2, a variable for slide 3, because we don't know how many variables we are going to have. We might have different amount of slides depending on what node we're in. So that doesn't work. That's why we decided to convert this part into a slot. Now, for the default behavior, we can still keep this in here and just define the slot in the twig template as well. How does it work? We basically need to use the twig block element. So this is just another block in Twig that you can use. What I am going to do is, instead of printing all of this, right, what I will do is I want to change it so that my block is what I am printing there, so that I can print the slot. As you can see, we definitely need to have the swiper wrapper. That's the thing that Swiper.js needs. But I don't need this stuff inside. So I could get rid of it and just put something different. Okay, how am I going to do it? Basically, instead of having this swiper wrapper there, I could very well just decide to put in here a Twig block. So I use Twig syntax with curly braces and percentage symbol, and then I declare my block, and I give it a name. And that name should be the name of the slot. In this case, we decided that the slot was there from before, so we already know that we called it slides. So I'm going to use that here. This is the block slides. And all I need to do is close it somewhere. In my case, I want to make sure that all of this swiper wrapper is the thing that is inside of my block. So I will have here an end block tag, end block slides. That means the whole slot is all this part. Okay? And you see I'm not passing a variable here. I don't need to. What I am doing is just define that this is a block that can be overridden and fully replaced if I send another block with this name. Okay? At this point, if I just save this and I go back to my page here and reload, there is virtually no difference, right? Why? Because the content of that block is still a slide 1, slide 2, and a slide 3. You can still see them down here. But what happens now? Well, in the field node template in the field slides template that I was invoking it, I can now change how I send data. So at this point, I'm going to go back there. It is this guy. I was just using this. I'm going to remove it temporarily. Just temporarily. If you want, you don't have to do it. But I want to show you what happens. If I do this and I reload this page, now, of course, I don't have the fields. Which for now, let's say that's good enough, because I don't want the fields in there. I want them inside of the block. How do I send that thing that we had before to the slider? Well, I will do it changing my call to the component. I told you before that we had two ways of calling the component. One of them is using the include, and the other one is using the embed. We use the include if we're not going to pass anything, or if we're going to pass only props, okay? If we want to send the title, we use the include. If we want to send another field, we use the include. But if what I want to do is replace a component of my SDC, like a block of my SDC, I will need to use the embed. So in this case, what I want is for all of these things that I have highlighted right now to be inside of this block, right? As that is what I want, I need to send that block. How do I do that? First, I will change, where is my thing? I will change how I'm calling it here. How do we change it? Well, I'm going to, I have two options here. I need to change that to send that data in, right? So for sending that data, I have two options. One of them is I can send it directly into the component definition, or I can make this be a variable and then send that, okay? Either way is fine. I'm going to do it with setting a new variable just because I don't want to be copying over and changing everything and moving a lot of stuff around. So what I will do here is I will do a set, again, Twig syntax with curly braces and percentage symbol, and I will set a new variable called list slides, for example, and I'm gonna close that set after I close the for. And I do here an end set. Okay? So with this, I am saying that list slides variable basically contains all of this. If I save this, for example, right now, and I go back to my page, I will be back there in a second, but then you can see this. So it is the same as if I had deleted it, kind of, because now I'm not printing that. Very well. We have it in a variable now. How do we actually send it? Okay, as I told you, we want to completely override the block with what we have in here. How do we do it? Well, we need to change this include for an embed. And this embed, basically, is just changing that word. So I'm gonna do embed, and then I define here the name of the component just as we did before. Still the name of the theme, colon, name of the SDC. And we're good. The thing with the embed is that then we need to pass blocks. And then we need to define here those blocks. So the embed will always have an end embed tag as well, like this. Okay? We have the end embed, and then inside of these two tags, I can define my blocks. So if I want to send the slides slot, I need to define that block inside of this section. So I will do it exactly in the same way as I did it in the other Twig file. So inside of this, I will come and I will say there is the Twig syntax, and then I'm going to define a block that will have the same name of the slot. In this case, it is slides. Of course, I will also have to close it eventually, so I will do it now, like that. And then inside of that block, I can actually send what I need. In this case, what is what I need? Well, basically, these guys here, which I already defined, are my variable. So I could perfectly, inside of that block, just print my variable. In this case, I am now calling my slider component, saying that I will replace some parts because that's why I'm using the embed. And then I'm saying what parts I'm replacing by defining a block for each slot that I want to pass. I'm going to test it, and I will come back to this page in a second just for you to keep going. But in case I messed up something, we want to see it before you copy it. So I'm going to reload. Now you can see we have the cards here, and we shouldn't have the slide 1, slide 2, slide 3 things. If we're in that situation, like if we're in this case, then we're all good. All good? Great. Perfect.
So do you need to look there? Okay. Why can't you just move this for cycle inside?
You can totally do it. That was the other option that I mentioned before. I could very well just copy this stuff. Oh, sorry. Copy this stuff. Like I can remove that set, and instead of printing the variable, I can just add the for there. I still need the block because the block definition is the one that allows me to say that I am going to replace the slot in the main SDC. And then doing that is the same as doing the thing we did previously. And as you can see here, it is all replaced. Yes?
I'm getting the white screen death on something.
Okay. You want to go?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to keep it as I had it before just for readability reasons. I find it easier to read in this way right now. So we know that we were setting the list of the slides in here, and then that we are printing that. Okay? But both options are equally perfect. Okay? That's great. They work. sorry. There you are.
Slide it to week 5.
Sure.
You still have this.
Yep, I still have this here. What I did is I created the slot here, the block, so that the slot makes sense, so that we can actually replace it. So I just added this line in line 5 and the one in line 13. Sure. Second. To the twig? Oh, no, to this one. Okay.
No. I'm saying don't change the code. Leave it like this. With the embed.
Yeah, we can leave it like this. Anytime. Actually, just for you to know, I did the block in, I think, the wrong place, and I just noticed when we were looking at it again, because if you look at it, I defined the block outside of the container. So when I am replacing this, I'm replacing the whole stuff. So if I add the JavaScript from Swiper, it is not going to work because I don't have the class. So in this case, and this is part of the important thing of defining where our slots are, we need to make sure we add it in the right place. We want to replace just the items. So the wrapper needs to be the same. And I shouldn't depend on what I put in the other side. So in this case, the best approach is for me to change the location of that block. So for example, I should actually not add it in line 5, but in line 6. And here it shouldn't be in line 13. It should actually be in line 12. Okay? So when we do it this way, and we reload our code, like, I'm not going to reload for a second just for you to see it. But if I do it as I had it before, this is the field, this is the element, the paragraph, this is the field item, right? And this is the swiper, but we don't have the swiper wrapper because I was replacing the whole thing. So I need, and we all need to do it, please. Change the place where we had the block definition. It shouldn't be in line 5, it should be in line 6. Yeah, because in this case now, if we do it like this, now let's see it fixed. If I save it and I go back and reload, you can now see we have the swiper wrapper, which is part of what swiper needed. Okay? So there's that. One more thing that we might need to look into is that if you look at the slider twig, each of the slides needed to have this particular class, the swiper slide, according to Swiper.js. In our case, each of the slides don't have it. They only have the class field item. So as we're still in the process of getting the HTML right, we need to make sure that when we're sending this data, they will have the right class as well. So what I'm going to do is I will add that class, the swiper slide, to my slides here. You see that here we were building each of the divs that contains each of the paragraphs. So apart from adding the class field item, I will try to add the swiper class. So basically I just add comma and then add my other class, which is swiper slide. When I do this, and I reload here, you can now see that each field item also has the swiper slide. So the HTML for my swiper is good to go. We good?
Not quite. Save this screen up for one more second.
Okay.
I made a bad mistake.
Uh-huh.
Gazunda.
I'm sorry. What happened?
I set my base theme to Stark, and then my Drupal install decided Stark was the new base theme, but it's not installed because it doesn't exist anymore. And now I cannot edit the theme info file or clear my cache.
Okay.
It's just convinced that Stark exists, but I don't have it installed.
Okay, that's it.
Maybe you know how to solve this. I changed this Olivero to Stark because it was dumb.
Can we see in the document? Let's go to core. Yeah, click there. And let's go to web core themes.
It is there.
It is there. So you don't see it in appearance because, and you can see this. If you open the info.yaml file, there is a property called hidden.
Is this good or bad?
Oh no, listen. So I can see that it is here. So can you come here? Yeah, no, we have to install it. So you can go DDEV Drush. Oh, actually, you can go to your appearance page. Oh no, it is not. Okay, let's go in the Drush for now. So DDEV Drush space theme colon en space start. Yes. There you have it below. There you have it.
Hey, thanks.
Now you have to log in, but you're done.
I'm good, thank you.
Anytime. finish completely the slider, and then we do the card if we have. Okay. So we have our slider HTML. We're good. Ideally, we will be doing the card, but let's continue with the same slider to get the whole thing, and then we will make it nice. Okay? We loaded the data. We have it here. We have the items. That's perfect. Now what? We could be working with the card. I'm going to skip it for a moment so that we can completely finish the slider. Even if it doesn't look great with the styling of the card at this point, but at least for the sake of finishing the slider. Okay? So, what I will do right now is, where are my slides? We're going to try to give some styles and some stuff here using Tailwind as well. So, how many of you have used Tailwind? Okay. For the rest of the people, Tailwind is basically a framework, kind of, that allows us to have utility-first CSS. So basically, it is a tool that has a library of classes that we can use. And what happens is that it creates a CSS file that contains only the classes that you actually need. So if you're familiar with Bootstrap, you had a library of classes there as well, and you have a lot of stuff in there that you can use. But then if you're using Bootstrap, you are loading the whole Bootstrap every time, right? Unless you process stuff locally, and then you have to be doing a lot of things to get it correctly. With Tailwind, there is still a library of CSS classes, but they are not going to be loaded by default in your site unless you explicitly mention any of them. So these utility classes will help you work within the constraints of the system instead of littering all your style sheets with arbitrary values. It is easier to be consistent with color choices, with font choices, with the spacing, with the grid system, with all of that stuff. It is low level. It is tiny because basically it never ships CSS that is not used. It is only shipping CSS that you are actually using in your templates. Basically, it removes everything that you don't need, and it is not going to be present in production. So your final CSS is the smallest thing possible. It is also cool because of the utility classes that it has, you don't have to write very complex media queries to get your stuff to be responsive and behave correctly in the different resolutions. So it's good. How does it work? Basically, it has a system that allows it to read the files, create the classes that are being used in your templates, then it confirms those things against the library of classes. If they exist there, then it creates that class, it like copies over the rules in your CSS file, and that's the thing that is used. If there is a class that is not used, it doesn't exist at all. And apart from the default library of classes that it provides, it allows you to define extra classes. So for example, if you have, like normally if you go to Tailwind documentation, there is a lot of classes there. So sometimes there is a padding, a pt2 class, which is basically for assigning a padding of, I don't remember how many pixels, in all directions for your component. But if you're not using that pt2 class, that rule doesn't exist. If you have colors, there are a lot of colors as well. You can use bg dash and the name of a color, and you're good to go. If you're using it in your system, it is added. If it is not used, it doesn't care. If for some reason you need to create another variable for a different color that is not part of the default colors that Tailwind provides, it still gives you an option to create that. So it's cool, it's useful. How do we work with it? we are going to go to tailwindcss.com. In the case of this training, we're going to be using Tailwind CLI to work with this. And we're going to follow a couple of steps here to actually get it working, okay? So, first thing is, as I told you, we're going to go to tailwindcss.com. In here, you can go to docs, and then in here, we have the installation. So Tailwind CLI is the one that we're going to be using, but there are some other options like PostCSS. You can use the CDN, but it is not recommended really. So you can use it if you really want to just test some stuff, and that's it. It is not recommended because in that case, it will ship with all of these classes that it provides, so that's against the purpose of Tailwind, right? So we're not going to do that. For working with Tailwind CLI, we will basically install it. We will follow these steps, and we will do our exercises. So let's go for it. Let's go to our terminal and get it working. So first step is, of course, we're going to install it. So let's go to Gitpod. Here we are. In this case, you can see I have this terminal in which I'm running certain stuff, but I am in the project folder. For installing Tailwind, what I will do is I want to be inside of my theme folder. So I need to move to that folder in the terminal to get there. I could do it in this same terminal, but I want to have two separate because eventually I want to leave a command running to watch my changes. So what I will do is I will create a new terminal in VS Code. So we'll just go with click on plus. That opens a new terminal, and then I'm gonna go towards the theme folder. So I'll do cd, project, web, themes, custom, and then the name of my theme. For some of you, it is DrupalCon. For some of you, it is Portland. For some of you, it is my new theme. So whatever it is, you go there. In my case, it is DrupalCon. In here, once I'm there, I want to install it. The command for installing it, and for this, I'm gonna maybe make that there. The command is npm install -d, capital D, bless you, Tailwind CSS. Okay? That will install the Tailwind CLI. Are we okay? Yeah? Oh, you're in your local machine, right? Yeah. Okay, so ddev does have it. So you can do ddev exec. Yeah, maybe ddev npm. I don't remember if you can do it directly, but what I will do is ddev ssh. And then inside of ddev ssh, I could do npm. Okay, perfect. So for those of you working locally, we still have npm instead of ddev, so you can run it there as well. Just do ddev npm. Actually, I'm gonna try to do it here quickly, like that. I will not run it, but just to show you. It is exactly the same command, but you will prepend ddev at the beginning. So ddev npm install -d Tailwind CSS. Okay? Yes?
That second command, the npx, is giving me a syntax error, question mark out of place.
Okay. Let's see it. Maybe mine will give it too, and we can troubleshoot together. Let's see. So the second one is npx Tailwind CSS init. Okay, what should happen is that you get that new file created. For him, it gave him an error saying that there is a syntax error. Does somebody else has that same mistake or another error? Unknown command? Okay. You are in your local machine, right?
Yes.
Okay. Who else has issues? What is yours? Unknown command? Okay. Yours? But you're in Gitpod. Okay, yours is different issue. Okay, so let's see.
On the local machine, if I put it with ddev exec npx, then it worked.
That's what I was going to say, because the thing is that we need to have npm installed. So if you don't have npm installed and then you had to do the ddev, npm, tailwind, all of that, then you also need to do ddev exec to execute the npx. Okay? All good there? All good you? Someone else? No? And for you, let's see. Tailwind CSS init. Yeah. So there is a Yes. Yes, there you go. Oh, you're not using ddev at all?
Yeah.
What are you using?
Yeah, CSS buttons. So yeah, I actually have it syncs to my computer, but I want to set up the phone and
Okay.
iPad.
So you don't have npm node installed. You just installed it. You just installed node.
The
What
one I
version of node
installed
do you have?
is
Node dash V?
something. I mean, you can use it on a laptop. A little, like something firmware.
1222.
Yeah,
So it is super old.
eats the battery
So
though a lot faster.
we
So
should update it.
right off the light.
Do you have npm? Let's see if you have npm.
Yeah.
Do you run npm?
Well, my
Hit enter.
monitor has it built into it. There's a hard class installed.
No, because that's not
I have to admit, I'm
always forget.
probably a
Give me
little
one
bit
second.
spaghetti using ddev most of the time.
Yeah.
I do have a big monitor for when I'm at home, but like I have to so I go down to my parents' house and I don't have a setup there, so yeah. So I've got to reset it down there. Yeah, 'cause
You have Ubuntu, right? Hmm. I think if you search for it in Google, you'll find this one. You can do sudo apt update, then this command, and then you should get the NVM version. And then we can install the version that we want of Node, but you first need to do this one.
letting them do 3 days a week,
Yes, for sure. Yes, you can add Tailwind to your current thing. That's totally okay, and then you can start using their utility classes. Yeah, and it shouldn't clash. It shouldn't clash, like unless you're calling something exactly the same it was called in Tailwind. But yeah, are we okay there? Okay, then the version that we're using of, oh my god, where it is? The version that I have of npm of Node is 2012. So you can do, once you have nvm, you do nvm install 20, even just that I think, or .x, whatever you want, .asterisk, that will install it, and then you just do nvm use. Good? The install, right? Okay. Then you do the use, and then we can do this command. Okay. Okay, so are we all, the rest of us, are we good?
I have 9.
You have 9?
Are you changing to 12?
But did, inside of DDEV?
No, outside.
Okay, so outside we don't care because you were doing it through DDEV. So if you do DDEV exec node-v, you can see the version. I think in your case, it doesn't matter at this point because it allowed you to install the Tailwind CSS.
Yeah, I have 16 inside.
Exactly, so that one works. The thing with him is he had like 12 in his local machine, so it couldn't install it, and he was not using DDEV. So it had a very old one. Yeah. Okay. So, good. So once we do the npx command, npx tailwinds CSS init, we should have a new file called tailwind.config.js. So that file is down here. It is still in the root of the theme folder, like our theme, and you can see it here. It is the default option, the default file. It just has some information for content, the theme key, plugins, and so on. So what is going to happen? Here, we need to configure our Tailwind so that we explain to it and we let it know what are the folders that it should look for to find the CSS classes from Tailwind, right? So normally what we are going to do here is in the content item, in the content property, we're going to start defining all of those paths that we want the engine to try to find these Tailwind classes. So in here, what I will do is, in our case, it will be in all the template files, right? So it is the template files that we have in a templates folder, all the HTML twig files, and also all the template files that we have in the components folder, because now we have also some twig files in there. So what we will do is start defining one line per path. There are some ways to work with it. It works with regex, well, something similar to regex. It's not exactly regex, but it allows us to define patterns as well. So I'm going to say that it is going to be / to find things in this folder, and then I'm going to give it a couple of options, because if you look at it, here in the root, I have the folder for components and the folder for templates. So it could be either of them. So the way for me to do that here is in the curly braces, I'm going to define the templates, or, and I will define that with a comma, components. So that means I want to search for Tailwind CSS classes inside of the templates folder and inside of the components folder. Now, inside of that, I don't care what it is, so I will add double asterisks to say everything inside of it, kind of. And then inside of it, I will add the files. So usually it is going to be, we don't care what is the file name, but it is going to be, so that means asterisk dot, and then we can also, we could say here it is going to be dot twig. In this case, I will be looking for Tailwind CSS classes in all the twig files, all the files that end with dot twig inside of the components folder or inside of the templates. If I wanted to also check for those Tailwind CSS classes inside of my JavaScript files, I could also add it here as another option. So instead of just being twig, for example, I can add twig inside of the curly braces and say that my other option is JS. Okay? In this case, I am accounting for both of them. Yeah, we added curly brace here to say that it is twig or JavaScript, and we added some more curly braces at the beginning to say it is templates or components folder.
That might answer my question. I was wondering if you dynamically apply classes with JavaScript, whether or not the Tailwind processor would pick up that you used them, even if they're not in your base files. Is that, this does that?
Yes, this one allows us to use the classes that are being added in JavaScript. Exactly. We were talking with Jesse? Yes, with Jesse. About what happens if, for example, sometimes you might have a field in your Drupal site that is a dropdown, right? And you have a list of options, and the key is the name, the Tailwind class. That one will be a problem. So there is, at least not to my knowledge, an easy way to just identify that. There is not a hacky way to not to do it. Yes, it's what we were talking. So what I have done is, like, for example, he was telling me that he has just like a dummy file where he adds the classes, and that works. Sure. In my case, I do. For the record, that's hacky. Yes, exactly. That's hacky. That's what we were talking about. I mean, it gets the job done. The way I do it is, I think it will be pretty much the same, because just that it is not a separate file. It is just, let's say, in the same template that is related to that file. I just add sometimes the conditions for it, and I just mention the items. So maybe I don't call the thing exactly the same, or I have a class that is P20, and then I put the P20 in the template for that field. So I know it is related to that one exactly. But I feel it is exactly the same type of hackiness. So either of them will work. But it needs to be in one of those files, right? If for some reason you have another type of file where you have those classes defined, you just need to add it to the content property here, just like this, and it will work. Like, probably we could have another one here and have dummy classes dot twig, and then it will read it as well, and that's fine. Okay? Kind of hacky, but gets the job done. So that's what we have, okay? Now, at this point, we're just telling it how it should be. This is this part. That means that if we start adding Tailwind classes to any twig file or JavaScript file that is inside of a templates folder or components folder, it is going to be processed and added to an output CSS that we will define somewhere. So great. What happens if it is CSS? What happens if I want to apply some Tailwind utilities in my CSS? Well, I can also do that. I can create CSS files that are going to apply these styles from Tailwind in the same way. So usually if you want to create a CSS file for it, let's say I'm going to come here in this CSS directly. I'm going to add a new file. And this is like some test CSS, right? Normally, what you will need to make sure is that you add some Tailwind directives so that it adds everything that is base to Tailwind. Maybe I could even call this one just like, I don't know, like input CSS or whatever. I'm going to call it input instead of test. And those directives are 3 main directives. It is Tailwind, add Tailwind, base. It gets all the base styles from Tailwind, so these ones might be needed. There is another utility called Tailwind components. And there is yet another utility called Tailwind utilities. Okay? And then in here you can start adding your classes. And your normal CSS rules, that's totally okay, but then you're also adding the base styles that Tailwind provides. Now, Tailwind CSS, the Tailwind CLI, allows us to post-process the CSS. So it is important to know that even if we're using, in this case, we're not using Sass, we're using CSS only. But if we were using Sass, it is not like the Tailwind CLI is going to process your Sass files to look for the things. That's not how it works. Your Sass will need to be compiled as you will normally compile it. And then we run the Tailwind CLI or the Tailwind post CSS thing to post-process the CSS, not the Sass. Okay, so it's important to have that clear, that at the end this tool is for post-processing CSS, not compiling Sass. So in the Sass part of the equation, it doesn't care. So yeah, that's what we have. Very well. We have this. How do we post-process it? How do we generate the things that we want? Well, that's why we have the Tailwind CSS CLI command that we installed. The way in which we are going to work with it is we need to run that CLI tool to scan all of the files and generate the output CSS. How do we do it? Yeah, we're in the same place, yeah. How do we do it? Well, basically, we will need to run the command in the terminal. So it is going to be, again, the npx. Remember to put the ddevexec at the beginning or be in the right terminal. So I'm going to go npx. The command is tailwind CSS, right? Tailwind CSS. And then we have a couple of flags that we need to send. We can send a -i flag, and that -i will allow us to define what is the CSS file that we want to process. Like if we need to scan a CSS file, we will need to pass the flag to this command. If we don't want to, we don't need to do that. So I will first do an example without it, and then another one with it, okay? So in this case, I will leave it like this, but then I will define where I'm going to output all the classes that are already processed. So to do that, I need to use the flag -o for output, and then I need to give the path to that file. So in this case, I'm gonna say in this folder, there is going to be a dist folder, and inside of it, I'm gonna have a CSS folder with a file called output.css. If I do this, what it will do is it will watch all my template and components folders, all of those files. It will try to find the Tailwind classes, and if it finds it, it is going to output it in this place. Okay? I'm going to leave it with a --watch command so that it watches if we do changes. So I'm going to do it. It is done. You can see that it also created the dist folder. We have the CSS folder, and we have the output CSS. And that output has some stuff in it. Okay? What happens now? If I go to my component, for example. Sorry, not this one. This one here. And I go to my twig file here. and I add, for example, a P20 class, which is a class for padding in Tailwind, and I save that, it revealed my assets. And then if I go back to my output, where is my output though? Here. And I go to the end of it, I should have the corresponding class somewhere. Almost there, almost there. Here we have it. It is now created. Okay? All good? Sorry?
Could you show again which command?
Oh, sure. It is npx tailwind CSS -o, and then the name of the file, the path and the name of the file that you want to output your CSS on, and then --watch to keep watching for it. Sorry? Output. It is for the output. Yeah. It is just one dash. -o. The one that has double is the watch. Here. No. No. It is not including that. Like, it is including a lot of, I think, though, this is a good question. Now I don't remember. You see that it includes a lot of stuff that are all the base things. I think it's likely some of it is included in the base at least. I'm going to do a change for you to see it. Like if I go to my input CSS, for example, and I have this here, and I add another class here. So for example, .test. And then I add a, I don't know, color red. That was scary. You see that nothing changed in here. It was not revealed, nothing happened. And if I go here and I try to find that, what's going on? And I try to find the test, there is nothing in that output CSS, right? That is because it is only looking for the things that I specified in the content. And it doesn't include any CSS there. So if I want to process the CSS files that I have, I need to manually say that that CSS file is part of the input it should take. So in this case, to do it, I will need to run the same command, but with a change. I need to also find the input. So I will do -i, and then I will say what is the input. So in this case, for example, for me, it was in the CSS folder called input CSS. So if I do that, I'm still saying, okay, so process everything, but also take this as the input. If I hit enter there, it will do some changes to that output file. And now here, if I try to find a test, it has it. This one is good, and we need the directives, because if we want to use the Tailwind classes inside of our own classes, it is needed. How does that work? It's just I don't see this anymore. Here, this one. So for example, if I go and try to find, I don't know, padding. Tailwind documentation usually has the information on how to use it. Where can I see it? I mean, maybe this one was a bad example, but like this. We have the directive apply, and then we can define in there what are the things that we want to apply. So for example, if I really want that red color, I could find what is the name of the class in Tailwind for having color red. And if I want that class test to also have a padding of 20, I can also add that one, and it will just add it, okay? So even here, I can try to find, I was saying the color. So text color, I think it's color red, and that's it. No, text red, for example. Yeah, so instead of doing this, I could very well do apply, and then say the one that I want to apply.
That's your output though.
Sorry?
You wouldn't want it in your output, would you?
I'm doing it in output. You're totally right. I messed up. Thank you. Here in my input. Very well. I do add apply, and then I add the classes that I want to apply. So if I want to make the text red, I do text red, and if I want, is it not like that? I think it is. Text red. Probably it is not just that. Let me see. Text red. There are all these options. I have an extension called Tailwind, and it is super useful for auto-completing all the stuff with Tailwind. So that's what I'm using there. So maybe I use text red 900, and then I also use PY 1020, and then I save, and then it reveals my stuff, and then now I should be able to see the test class with that color and with that padding in the output. And you can see it here. It has the padding, and it has the color.
Sorry, what's the extension?
Tailwind. You can see it here. You can find Tailwind. Tailwind CSS, the first one. Yes, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense. That one works. Yes. Just because we're on this, you can also use the Twig code snippets. That one is useful. There is another one called, well, you probably know about this one, but there is a Drupal syntax highlighting. This guy here. It is very useful because then we get all the colors and all of that for the Twig and the .module and .theme files. So we have that.
Which were the ones? Because there's like a lot of templates.
I have this one, Drupal syntax highlighting by Skip the Node. Yeah, and it is super useful. So yeah, this is how you can work with that. So as you can see, we can do all of it. Now, ideally, we will have some task that will do all the watching and all the building automatically, right? Because right now I'm just doing it manually. I just run the command and there is that. But ideally, we should have something that loops through all the folders and tries to find all the CSS and then tries to post-process it to apply the Tailwind stuff. Okay? But yeah. Okay. test dash I dot slash CSS dash O we save it dot slash CSS CSS there we go. So the issue is that when we run videv exec, it runs the commands from the document. So you saw that when I did videv exec, that when I do join here, I did videv SSH to get inside of the container, and then I wanted to see where I was. And when I do this, I can see that I am in the root of the project, not the root of the theme, because I can see the web folder. So I have to get inside of the exactly.
So can you let that all the time?
Yes, but in this case, I just let it running in that way, so it is already running inside of it. If I
Oh,
go
that's
to
why
C
you
now,
have exec
you can see that I am already in the
you
theme
were
folder,
outside and
because
so
this
it
is
does
the path to the
everything
web,
rather than
and we're already in the
staying
theme,
away
unless
from
we
that
exit
folder.
that.
That's why.
If we exit now, we are outside.
So
But with videv SSH, you are in.
just do it in
Yeah,
SSH.
it's my
Yes,
well,
yes.
it was funny.
And
The
then
add-ons
you do videv SSH,
for
you do
the
the
starter,
CD,
he
and then we do
did
the
a
NPS.
command, and there's actually a flag where he uses include npm.
How are you going?
So it's like
All good? No, not good. Okay. If you have any questions, just let me know.
Could you explain again if you're using like own application sass, how to manage it?
Does it say directories
If
that
you
you
if I'm using like own application has to do like application sass, how to
Okay. So you will have normally your SAS, right?
yeah.
And you already have some jobs that are compiling that SAS.
Yes.
That's perfect. What you need to do is add to your current pipeline, to your current task runner, an extra tab to post-process that CSS. So that you can run this thing for that other, like after the SAS has been compiled, for
Yeah.
example, you can do it successfully.
You're going to just add here, like tail config file or
Okay, maybe I misunderstood your question then.
yeah. I didn't get the last thing. I'm not designer, sorry.
No, don't worry.
I'm developer. So you compile sass, and then what you do? How do you add it to web?
Okay, so normally, I don't know if you're using like Tool or
Nowadays
npm like run
yes.
something.
Yes.
Okay, that probably that package JSON should have some like a list of tasks that it is running.
Yes.
What we need to do is add an extra task
Okay.
that allows you to convert all the CSS that was generated into like process that CSS.
Something as in package you
Yeah, yeah. In the same package JSON file, you normally have a list of all the scripts that you have available. And in one of them, like if you're compiling with npm build, for example, that one has a list of tasks that it runs.
okay, got it.
One of those tasks is usually compiling CSS.
Okay.
So you will have another one to go doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we, for example, we're using both. Like we use npm, yes, but we have what was the task project for Travis. Yeah. Normally when I run it, it's just like npm run build and that's it. But under the hood, it's running somewhere in our setup.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So
There were like two ones on my
Okay. I think it might be fine, but it's just that you don't have, let's, as long as in the output CSS you have the things that you added, we are good. It is inside of this folder, CSS.
They look different.
They look different. I can see. Okay, let me get closer to you.
okay.
There we go. go and manually do some extra stuff. What I have done is I create an extra alias, an extra command for ddev. So every time I just do ddev exec, it is actually doing ddev exec and cd something and the rest of the thing. Okay. So yeah, that's how we can work with all of these. We now know how to add classes. We now know how to apply the classes in our CSS. Again, in some cases, we might not need to do it here. I know that in some design systems, usually the developers are trying to make sure that we don't write CSS anymore and we just use the Tailwind classes. So that might be an approach. In some other projects, for example, I have been writing the CSS in the CSS files and using the Tailwind only on the other places. But I guess it will depend on the system you're working on and the standards that you have in your teams, right? But this is something you can do. Now, good. We have our class there. For example, we are applying this right now to the body. But what happens if I want to apply it to the swiper? I don't know if you remember, but in our component, we had this swiper thing. If I go back, what is this? Okay. Where is my site? There it is. Too many things. I don't see the bar at the top anymore, and now I don't know where is anything. Yeah, maybe we could, yeah. Okay, you see that? I have nothing. I can't see it. Why? Ideas? Should we clear the cache? That's usually a good thing. In this case, it is not it. We have to clear it, but it is not it. Yes. Exactly. The site is not using the output file. So we just created it, but we need to tell the site to use it. So what we're going to do is we need to create a library for it. In this case, I'm going to create it because this is my CSS for everything, right? If I was adding this class in the component folder, I wouldn't need to because it automatically loads it. But as I'm saying that this output is for the whole site and it has a lot of stuff, then I do need to do that. So how will I work with that? What I will do is I'm going to go to my libraries YAML file. So here I have the libraries YAML file. And then I'm going to go to the very end, and I'm going to add a new library. And then in this one, I'm going to just give it a name. In this case, I will say it is called TailwindCSS, because it is the result of all those things I'm doing. Inside of it, I'm going to start defining the assets. So in this case, it is going to be just that CSS. So I define it is CSS. Inside of it, I go 2 more spaces. And this is going to be, remember that when we're adding libraries in themes, we need to define, in adding CSS assets to a library in a theme, we need to define what is the category of the asset. And it can be either base, layout, component, state. And I'm missing another one. Base, layout, component, theme, and state. Yeah. So we can add that here. In this case, I'm going to define it as a base. And then inside of it, I'm going to start defining the path to the file. So this path is the path to the output file that we created before. So I'm going to go dist/css/output.css. And we always need to give it a set of settings. In our case, I have no settings for it, so I'll just leave it as colon and empty curly braces. Once I've done that, I have my library defined. It is just registered at this point, but I still haven't told Drupal to use it anywhere. So I need to tell Drupal to use it. I will do it by going to my info YAML file and declaring the use of it. So I'm going to go back to the info YAML file. And down here, I'm going to, oh, actually not down here. I think I have already a libraries key. Yep. I have this libraries key. So I'm going to add that new library to that set of libraries. Everything that we add in the libraries key in the info YAML file are going to be libraries that are loaded by default in all pages that are using this theme. So I'm going to go there, and I'm going to define it. So every library's name is going to be always following the same pattern as the components, except instead of colon, it is going to be a slash. So theme name / library name. In this case, DrupalCon / TailwindCSS. DrupalCon is the theme. TailwindCSS is what I define in my libraries YAML file. I can clear the cache now. As you can see here, this one is still running, so I will switch my terminal. Probably this one. This one is good enough. So I will do ddev drush cr. That allows me to clear the cache. I could also do it from the UI. That's totally fine. But once we're done there, I'm not going to find my site again. What is the number? 6. Okay. If I reload it, does it look like a different color? Yes, right? Yes. You can see if I go to Swiper, now I have the padding and I have the color. It was a dark red, so.
I got an error.
You got an error? Okay. Incomplete library. Let's go to the libraries YAML file.
It could be, is your thing still compiling in the other, check that,
Oh, this is capital? No, it should all be lowercase.
Yeah,
That
everything
is.
looks right.
So totally fine.
okay, that's what
And
mine
this is saying that
says,
it
it
needs to
it could
complete
be a
because it's
pattern.
trying to find the CSS. So it knows there is something there, but it doesn't care what it is.
Okay, so that's what it is.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And it's also telling me that everything is complete, so it's not giving me the negative either.
Okay. Let's go to the Tailwind config YAML file. Config.js. Complete component. Oh, you have the PY there. Oh, yes. Yes, it is not. Yes, you need to remove it again. Yes. When you remove a class, that I'm going to tell you. Because, yes, that is expected behavior. It's not the nicest, but yes. So, just in case, if any of you is trying to remove a class from your template, and you will notice that it is not removing it from the output CSS. So right now, that is expected behavior of the tool. You will need to stop the running, like the watcher, and run the command again so that it regenerates the file, removing the things and just with the things that you actually need now. So that is because of an issue in the watch command, that it just keeps adding stuff instead of removing, but it should be like that. Okay. Okay, there is something that is happening. So on the npx command that we're using for generate the output CSS, we're defining a -i flag, right? So that we can also try to post-process the CSS and get the Tailwind applied there as well. We cannot use those paths in the Tailwind config.js just like the Twig.js because they are different things. So the content key property in the Tailwind config.js allows us to try to find these Tailwind classes in some files, right? What happens with the CSS is that the post-processing is going to be using the directives as well. So it is not like it just needs to find the classes. If it finds the classes but it doesn't have the properties, it is different kind of stuff. So it is different kind of processing what it does between the other files and the CSS. For the CSS, you need to run the Tailwind CSS npx command. For the others, the watcher is actually looking to find, like, the watcher is actually scanning the files to get the thing there. But CSS will be different. We cannot add the path to the CSS files because it will not understand it. Okay? And just as a matter of general information, we're not using SAS in this training, but just because it was more convenient for us right now to not use it, okay? Ideally, you should still use SAS in your project because it is like 1,000 times better for maintenance reasons, and it is going to be easier to write your CSS and to keep it legible and all of that. So you should still do it and still have your compile tasks that are going to convert it into CSS, and then you can apply the post-processing of it to include the stuff. So just there. Now, we have, no way, give me 1 second. There we are. We have our element here. We still have all of those elements in there. There are some other things that we can do, of course, in Tailwind. For example, we can add Tailwind variables. We can add more stuff. Before going and adding more Tailwind variables and so on, I really want us to make sure our swiper actually swipes, right? Because right now it is not happening yet. We added Tailwind. We can now start adding classes and use them, and that's perfect. But we still don't have our swiper. Even if it doesn't look great, we should at least get it to swipe. So let's do that other part, okay? And then we will focus on making it nice. So what do we want to do for it? In this case, I'm going to go back to the swiper information. So you can see here, oh, this is Tailwind. Where did I put my swiper? Here. Okay, for the swiper, we needed to have the HTML layout, right? But we also need to add some CSS, and we also need to add some JavaScript. So for the CSS, you can see that we have some things here. For the JavaScript, we need to initialize it with this stuff. But also at the very beginning of this page, we got the information that we need to install it. There are a couple of ways. One of them is installing from npm, but we're not going to go that route. The other way is doing it from a CDN. So that's what we're going to do today. In this case, it is using these two items here, this CSS and this JavaScript. But we shouldn't really need to add this stuff because also it should be added to the head or at the very end of the body. It's not a good idea to put it in our case. We need it in the component per se. So what we should be doing in this case is create a library or make sure that we can include this into our component. The SDC components, as I mentioned before, give us the option to have the auto load of styles. And if we looked at our site, we haven't done that. But if I go there, here, for example, and I go to my components, I can very well create another file in here. I don't know, let's do new file, slider.css, and I can add all the styles I want in there. According to my swiper page, that is somewhere here, one of the things it was telling me is I can add these styles for the swiper, right? So I could very well just move them around and put them in here. So I have the swiper, I have the width, I have the length, the height. Very well. In the other file that we had, remember the input, we were adding this, but I don't really need it. And actually, as it is a swiper style, it shouldn't be here. It should actually be in the other place. We could take it out. I'm going to remove it from here because I really don't need it. But I am not going to add it in the other one just because if I do, I will need to process that file to generate the new output. Okay? And I don't want to. I'm lazy. So I won't do it right now. But here we have that, and we can even just, for the matter of testing, add a weird background there to make sure that it is being loaded. Please notice that at this point I haven't defined that I'm using this library anywhere, this file anywhere. If I just clear the cache and I go back to my site, and I reload it, the whole swiper should have the thing. It has the style. It has the it has the height, the width, it has the background color. It is not great, of course, because those styles are awful, but we can confirm that we're using the file. This is happening because of that auto-loading that SDCs allow. SDC only needs us to have a CSS file with the same name as a component and a JS file with the same name as a component, and it loads it immediately. In this case, that's it. The problem is that for this component, we not only need that CSS, we also need the CSS that is coming from the CDN, that is the one that brings the styles from Swiper. So how do we work with that? We need to override the definition of the libraries of the component, okay? So SDC has that default mechanism that allows us to autoload, but if we need to add something extra, we need to override that. The problem with that override is that we cannot just define the new item because the old one will be removed. The override of libraries in SDC basically means that we completely take over, and then the autoload is not going to work anymore for that component that we are overriding. So what we have to do is we're going to go back to our code, and to work with that, we're going to do it in the component YAML file, okay? The same file that we were working at before. Remember, we only have the name, the props, and the slots, but we can add one extra key at the end of it, and this one is going to be called library overrides. Library overrides, okay? Like that. And then inside of it, we're going to override the assets that we need. We're going to do it just like we were working with before. When we were working with the libraries YAML file, we were doing this, so we're still going to do the same. We define the CSS and JavaScript assets. In our case, CSS is good, colon, then enter, and then we need to define the category. Remember I told you before, we have 5 categories: base, layout, component, theme, and state. In this case, as this is for a component, I'm going to say that the category is component. So I do component here. And then inside of that one more, I add the path to it. When we did it with the library XAML file, we used that local path, right? But we can very well use an external URL, and that's perfectly fine. So in this case, I'm going to use, if I find my page again, where is it? 3, 2, no? I'm so sorry, guys.
2? No?
It was 7. Okay. So here in the information on how to use the CDN, we have that. So for the CSS, you can see here we have this href. So that's basically what you're going to copy. Okay? So in this case, it is that CSS. I'm going to copy that. You can copy it with the HTTPS or just the rest of it. That's totally fine. So I do it here. I add it. And then I give some settings to it. So for now, I'm just going to leave it like empty with empty curly braces, and that's it. This will make it so my library is finally going to be using these styles from Swiper, right? That's good. But if I clear the cache and go back to see my site, now I don't have my custom styles. Why? Because as I use the library overrides, I'm replacing all of it. So now I have to manually add it. So what I need to do is, apart from adding that external one, I will need to manually define in here my custom CSS. So I will do slider.css because it is in the same folder, colon, and then the settings. And there we are. So now if I clear the cache again, because these are changes to the YAML file, and I go back to my site and reload, I should have the styles. And then you can see that we have that thing here. It's not working, but it is there. Now, why it is not working? Exactly, we're missing the JavaScript. You see the arrows or not? Okay, let's see. Yours is fine.
I'm not seeing the background, the red.
Did you add it? I added the red background. Maybe you're not. Okay, let's see. Okay, so in the slider CSS, I added this background red to the swiper. Do you have that? Yes. Okay. And this width and height are important for us to be able to see the arrows as well. If we don't add it, they might be in different locations. So maybe it is not that they are not in the page, but that you cannot see them because of the styles. Okay? So now, if we have the styles correctly, we can add the JavaScript, right? So for adding the JavaScript, it's the same approach. So according to Swiper documentation, this is the CDN. This is the file from the CDN. So that is what we will want to use. I'm going to copy that URL. Then, I'm so sorry. I'm going to copy that URL, and I'm going to add it to my file. So I will still go to the component YAML, and still in that library overrides, I will define my new assets. This time it is a JavaScript asset. So I'm going to go back a couple of times until I get to the same level than the CSS. And I will write the JS, because my new asset is JavaScript. And then in the case of the JavaScript, we don't have categories. So we can just put directly the file after that. So inside of JS, 2 more spaces, I put the CDN link, the settings, and we're good to go. If I reload the page after clearing the cache, I get this thing, which still not working. Why? We don't know. No, in this case it is not working because Swiper functionality was saying that we needed to initialize it as well. So if we go to Swiper here, you can see that it was saying, okay, we definitely need the CSS and the JS bundles, but we also need the HTML layout. We already have it. We also need some CSS styles and size. We already have it. And then we need to initialize it, but we haven't done that yet. So that's what we need to do. Basically, at this point, we're just going to copy that stuff. I'm just going to copy that code. I'm going to go back to my site, and I'm going to create the JavaScript file. So inside of the slider folder, I will create another file called slider.js. And inside of that one, I add that code. That will initialize all of the items. And then, of course, I still need to add it to my libraries, because remember, we use a library override, so we're taking over everything. So in the JS part, we add the new JS file, which will be slider.js, colon, and empty curly braces. If we have that done, we clear the cache, and we go back to the site and reload. We have our item there. And then you can see here how it is letting me scroll over the things. It is not looking great. We can change a lot of stuff still, but that's what we have.
I might have missed it, but in the CSS, in the component.yaml, you've got CSS component and then your things, but in the JS, it's just directly the things, not the
Yes.
layer. Why was that?
Yes. Drupal requires for us to define what is the order of. Okay, so Drupal requires us to define what is the category of the CSS files, but not the category of JS files. It doesn't care about the category of the JS files, because most of the times, the JS that you're going to run just runs on its own, and you don't care what runs first, right? But in case of CSS, it is cascading style sheets. So you might have some style, and then another one that overrides whatever you had before. So in that case, the order actually matters, and the categories allows us to define, in a way, in what order we load stuff. So for example, every asset that is marked as base is going to be loaded first. And then for multiple items that are on the same category, what will change is the weight. There, you could have like an extra settings here called weight, where you can define that it is -10, for example. And then if you have two assets that are base, it could use that. Otherwise, it has a method of defining which one. But the thing is that everything that is base is loaded first, then everything that is layout, then everything that is component, then everything that is theme, and then everything that is states. So it's a method for organizing the thing and loading priorities. Yes?
In terms of loading, does CSS matter if it comes first before JS, or is that a particular order that it needs to be loaded?
I think it does matter in this case because when we run our, well, in the case of the CSS you're talking?
What do you, like, the structure you have right now, you have CSS and then JS, and like,
Oh, it's okay if you switch it up. That one is okay. You can very well just put the JS files first and then the CSS files. No issue. Yes?
Do you need the slider.js there under the JavaScript on the library because it's in the component?
Yes.
It doesn't automatically load?
No, it will not load it, and it will not load this one because I added these library overrides. So when I add the library overrides, it basically overtakes all the functionality of how libraries work for a component, and it doesn't use what the SDC provided by default. So if we don't need extra CSS or extra JavaScript, then you're good to go. It will load automatically. But if you need to add something else, in that case, you need to use the library overrides, and in that case, you also need to define these files, even if they were loaded automatically before. Okay? Are we good here?
Did yours move?
Yes, mine moved. It looks awful, but it moves.
Mine either moves or wrong direction.
CSS is considered as object.
Sorry?
Your CSS library override CSS considered as object, not as a string. Is it like like your URL?
Uh-huh.
It's not a string, it's an object.
This thing? I'm so confused. Okay, now this basically is,
No. Whatever, like, look at your description. It's different color, right? Because it's string. But your component, your CSS is not a string. It's object. It's blue color. Your URL, cdn.js. It's blue color because it's an object, not a string.
yes, it is not a string because we need always to assign an array, we need to assign an object of settings that the asset can have.
You added okay.
Yeah, so in this case, for example, one setting that we could have is the weight that I was telling you before. Another option might be external. So we can define if this is an external asset. So we add external : true. We can add another one that is minified. So if the file is minified, you can also say minified true. Those are different settings that you can have in your assets.
Could I see a JS file?
Sure.
I got something not working.
Okay.
I'm guessing I didn't.
This one?
Yeah, the slider.js. Yeah. Okay, I must have grabbed the code wrong.
Okay.
Yeah,
For
where did you
example,
grab that code from? Because I don't have that at all.
sorry?
I missed where you grabbed that from.
Oh, yes. So it is from here. So basically, I went to swiperjs.com.
Okay, initialize.
Exactly, there is the initialize swiper part. I copy it over from there.
Yes, excellent, thank you.
Anytime. And then from here, we can start customizing the thing, right? So for example, in my case, it is swiping vertically. I don't want to. So maybe I can just get rid of that direction vertical. If I get rid of it and I go back to my site and I reload it, now it is not vertical. So you can see that I have the 3 items. And it has the infinite loop. So there it is. Now it is just a matter of playing around with the properties we have there and making sure that style-wise it is like what we want. Okay?
Sorry, could you show that again?
Sure.
I didn't see it.
Here? What I did was I removed the option for direction vertical. Yeah, because the direction vertical was like awful in my example. So I didn't need it. Even at this point, if I don't want to keep like that size, for example, I can get rid of this one. And in the CSS, I can Maybe I don't want this. I can change the height. I can make it 600, for example. And now it looks like this. And it has more stuff. See? So that's something we can do. And from here and on, we can just start adding some classes to make it look nicer and all of that. So this is how we can work with it. At this point, of course, the cards are not looking good, so we can create our SDC for the cards and make sure that our paragraph calls that SDC and that it is going to be printed nicely. We can start adding some Tailwind classes to everywhere to make it nice. We can change the variables that Tailwind provides and work with it. So are we good here?
Sorry.
Yeah?
So the arrows on my page are not showing on the second card.
Okay. On the second card, tell me?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's cool. Kind of weird.
I'm not getting the
As you can
padding
see,
installed. Let me
it's not
see.
shown here, but after pt2,
Okay, let's see.
But the
Oh,
padding too, I'm
I'm not
getting
sure
a block.
what. I just always hit the up arrow to get the command again.
So to get back, there is no way.
yeah.
Okay, let's continue. Okay, so there is that. There are some ways to create the extra classes in Tailwind as well. We can look at it. Basically, for example, we could create like extra fonts in our site and make sure that Tailwind has a class for those extra fonts so that we can easily apply that font family to our text, for example. So an example of how we can do that is we can go and try to get a font from Google, and we are going to define it as we normally would in our site, and then we will just configure Tailwind to create a new variable, okay? So let's go to fonts.google.com and work with that. You can go to fonts and find any font that you like. So maybe I will choose this one just to see the differences, obviously. So I'll choose here. I'll click in the top right to get the font. And then here I will get the embed code. What happens in this case is we get all these things, and that gives me an URL that I can use, right? I can use that URL, and I could work with it. So what I will do is I will copy over this URL. In my case, I have a couple of fonts in there, but that's totally fine. I will copy that URL, and I'm gonna go and create my new library, okay? So in this case, I just copy it over. I'm gonna go to my code that I forgot where it is now. Now it is in the 5. Can't believe it. But I'm gonna go back to my libraries YAML file, and I'll create a new one. So I'll add yet another library. I'm gonna call it font. I'm gonna add a CSS. I'm gonna say it is a base, and then I'm gonna put my URL, colon, and then empty curly braces. Okay? Just that means that I have my new font, and I am good to work with it. Again, you can go and take it from somewhere.
Display swap or whatever that is.
Sorry?
On the end of the font embedded has like ampersand display swap.
Yes, I'm keeping it, yeah. Okay, so now that I have my library defined, I'm going to say that I want to load it everywhere. Yes? Yeah, here.
So I have a question. Why would you load it in this YAML file as opposed to the one that's in the theme or in the flow?
Okay, this is the one that is in the YAML, in the theme, in the root of the theme. So if I want to have this loaded everywhere, I will use the theme. If I want to have this loaded in every page, then it's better for me to use it here.
Okay.
Because the thing is that if I have a font, most of the times, if you have some fonts in your site, it is because they're going to be used across the website, right? If you have something that's going to be used specifically and only in one component, then yes,
Okay.
do it in your library overrides.
I was just curious why here,
Yeah.
because I know we're building this component.
Yeah. In this case, it is here because I might want to use it everywhere. I might want to have that. Now, if I register it here, it doesn't mean that I am already using it everywhere. It is just that it might be used in a lot of places, independently of where it's located. So there is that. If I want it to be loaded everywhere, I will do that change in the info YAML file. So again, here, just as I added the Tailwind CSS, I can come here and add another one. I will actually add it before the Tailwind one. And I will do DrupalCon/font. That was the name I gave it. And I can clear the cache. And I'm good there. But at this point, I will need to manually go and say, for a particular class, that the font family is going to be this thing. And I don't want to. So let me just try to. Oh, I know what's going on. There it is. I put it in full screen and I didn't notice. Okay, now I can see stuff. That's good. So this is this is the thing. You can see here, normally if I want to use that font family, I will be using it in this way. I don't want to, so I want to create just a class in Tailwind that will allow me to just use it easily wherever I want. So that's what I want to do right now. How will I do that? Well, I already defined that I am going to be loading my library everywhere. That means the font is going to be available, but I still don't have a class for it. So what I will do is use Tailwind for that. On Tailwind, if we go to the Tailwind config.js file, we have this thing here called theme. And this variable allows us to add extra stuff. There are two things. We can use the extend or just directly the theme. We want to add an extra variable, so we're just going to be using the extend section, because if we don't add the extend, what is going to happen is that it will even delete the options or the classes that Tailwind has by default for whatever we're trying to use. So if what I'm trying to do is create a new variable for font families, I will extend the font family part to do that, so that I still have the old font family versions or variables that Tailwind has, and the new one. To do that, I will just come here to extend and do it. I could just tell you, yes, let's go and do that. But if you want to see how to do that for all other items, you can also look at it directly in Tailwind documentation. So in the documentation here, for example, we can come and try to find the font. Font family. There we are. And then you can see here that normally these are the classes, font-something, font-sans, basically gives us this font family, font serif gives us this one, font mono gives us this one. Maybe we want to keep those as options and just provide an extra one, so we will have to do something. What is the something? We can even see it in here. If you scroll down, you can see here that we have the option to add it to the theme. It is a property called font family, and then we add whatever we need. If you do it directly on theme, again, you will be removing the options that we saw at the beginning. So we will not do that. We will just do a new one. What are we going to do there? I will basically just go back to my code, and then in the extend, I'm going to, sorry, not here. Instead of the extend, I'm going to add the font family, colon, and I will add my object that I will have there. So instead of it, I can define the name of the variable I want, or the suffix for the variable. In this case, I think my, oh, sorry about that. That's not what I meant. It is called, my font, it's called Briem Hand. So I'm going to just use that name. I'm going to say Briem Hand, all lowercase, and then colon, and then I will just add whatever Google Fonts said I had to do. So if I go back, not like that. If I go back to here, I can see this is how Google Fonts say that we should use it. So I'll just copy that over, and I'm going to go back to my site. And here in quotes, I'm going to add it. Like that. If I do this, that means that now I have a new variable called font-bremhand that I can use anywhere that will basically get that style. So if I want to see that working, I can go back to my swiper, for example. I can go back to my component. And here in the swiper tweak, for example, I'm going to copy that name because just that was scary again. Okay, I'm going to go back to my tweak file. And for example, here, apart from the pt2, I might add the font -bremhand. And if I'm still watching my code, it should have compiled it. So I could even see it in my output CSS. There it is. So if I reload my site, I should see my thing. Okay? So this is the way for us to be working with all those Tailwind variables and such. Sure. It is not here, but here. I'm going to reduce the size of the terminal. Sorry?
Oh, just can we see the slider.twig file?
Yes, yes. I'm trying to find it.
Ah, sorry.
Don't worry. Here it is. Yes.
Two questions.
Go on.
One, what is the advantage to using SDC as opposed to just templating the paragraph?
Like we were doing it before?
Yeah, so like if I was just to make a new color or new paragraph called slider and add the fields, and then just build the template for the slider, I can still loop through everything like we're doing here, but now it's in two separate places. And it's a little confusing to me where to put which piece, right? When we're
Okay.
doing classes and changing stuff, does that go in
Yes, yes.
the part or the paragraph part?
Okay, so maybe because of the way in which we do it and that I decided to not do the other card, the other SDC, it isn't as obvious. But the thing with SDC is that you can have your front-end developers just doing the SDCs and not, like, they can perfectly ignore the rest of Drupal and it should still be fine. It is also easier to get other developers that are not that familiarized with Drupal to build components, like for example with the storybook and so on. They could perfectly build them in other systems and we can just easily port them here. It is just a matter of having a folder that has the twig file, the JS, the CSS, and that's it. In the old way of doing the things, everything is everywhere, right? So you have to do the things in the templates, and then you have to go and find a file that has the CSS that is in another place, and then you have to go and find the JS file, which is in another place, and then you have to go and find the images, which is also in a different place. So it is like everything is everywhere, and the naming conventions for all of it are very specific, but at the same time kind of random things for people that is not familiarized with it. So it is harder to jump in, it is harder to maintain, it is harder to get people on board into how it is done. With SDC, the goal is that everything that we have in Drupal is now going to be using components-based approach, right? So starting because it is going to be components-based approach, that is great already because it increases reusability of everything. But apart from that, it is more accessible to everyone else outside of just us, the Drupal folks that like Drupal. Also, it's easier to maintain later because you can do this, and then 5 months later, when you find there is a bug in your swiper, you don't have to go and find what are all the files related to this swiper. You just go to this component, fix it here, and it is automatically fixed for all the swiper components that you have. So it's a little bit of that, and it is great for implementing design systems. It is super convenient for it. Right now, the other point that you say, you are totally right, we still have this limitation that we need to go anyways to the paragraph template or the field template and glue the two things together, yes. But the team is working already on some modules that are going to allow the developers or the site builders to just tie those things together in the front end, like using the site building. So you can very well go to your manage display page and say, I want to display the button as a component. And then it says, okay, yes, which component? And then you say, oh, I have the button component, so let's use that one. Or as a card component, let's use that one. And then you map the fields of the paragraph type, for example, to the fields of your component that were defined in the component YAML file, and then it will automatically populate it. And that's why you can have the SDC display and SDC block modules that I mentioned before. Yeah. That will have a lot with that. Sorry?
That, like, you can, with that piece you're talking about, it doesn't matter if you're building it in blocks or building it in paragraphs, you can still have access.
Exactly, because it is just from the managed display. Yes. Give me 1 sec. So there is that part, but at the same time, there are going to be other things like the experience builder. For example, the plan with experience builder is that you're going to have like a theme builder as part of it, and you could even just get your things. If you have the components YAML file, you just get automatically the structure in Drupal to store it. So it's going to be a lot easier to do all this kind of stuff.
So when you're building these files, there's like an abstraction between back end and front end now. So
exactly.
End, you can have all your classes and all of that kind of stuff, and anything that manipulates the data, or that piece goes in the back end part.
Exactly. So you can very well have your front-end developers working on building the design system, and they do their thing, and then you have your back-end developers do their thing, and then you eventually, when you want to, you can come and just start putting things together, and that's great.
We have a team of 3, and we're both front and back end. We do this all at the same time.
Okay.
Like I would do the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
The other guy would be doing something, a different component, but doing the whole thing.
Uh-huh. But even then, I think it is useful because then you do your SDC, you do your backend part for it, you glue it together, you already know, and then later on when the other guy needs to come and fix something that happened here or add an extra functionality, it is just a matter of looking at, okay, this is here, and there is just one entry point that is going to be the thing that is separated.
I mean, how granular should you go with this? Like, down to each individual field? Like, if you have a heading field that you're going to reuse?
I wouldn't say I will go that far. Like, it will depend on what type of elements you want to do. So for example, we're currently working on a site that for the header is usually like an H1, and it has like an eyebrow at the top. And then in some cases, we also have some badges below, but not always. So for the H2 or the H1, I mean, the H1s are the same in all the site. So I can just use that as the base CSS of my website, and that's fine. But for that component that has the H1 and the eyebrow and the badges, I will create a component for that one, an SDC for the whole element that has all the different stuff, and that's it. But I wouldn't go as far as to try to create SDC for each of the HTML elements. It's not needed. Yeah.
And hopefully this isn't just an ignorance of the concept, but so you've got your, just front-end folks, and they've developed a perfect button that works, and they've tested it, maybe you've got theming, so you're going to put it on 5 different branding sites, and each one of them wants the button to be their brand color. Is there a best practices for saying, I'm going to use the component, but I want the button background color to be this variable that I use as a site-wide variable?
Yes. So, um, yes. So the idea will be, there are two things that I can answer this. There are two ways I can answer this. So the idea will be that you have your theme, right? You have your design system. Depending on how you're doing that, like for example, I can imagine that in university websites that you have a main theme with brand guidelines, but then in each faculty has like different colors. Probably that's what we're talking.
Well, like that, yeah.
Okay. So you might want to provide, there are two ways again. You might want to provide options in your theme so that when you enable this theme in that faculty side, they can choose what is the color palette that they want to use. That will be by using theme settings. So you could do that. If you want to allow the site builder, for example, or the site admin to change that stuff to a color palette that you are predefining as an option in your theme. That is one option. The other thing is, if you have the design system and you are working, this is more like a design thing. I'm not a designer, but I've heard some of it. So if you have your design system and they are using like tokens in there and so on, usually they have those tokens for the different colors. So if that's the case, and then you create a theme that is a copy of the first one, or create it as a starter kit, for example, and then it's going to be using the other one as the base, you could just override those tokens or those variables, and that will work. So, for example, I don't think I have that in this one, though. Yeah, no, I don't think we have that in this one. But sometimes we have like a source folder, and inside of that one we have a variables file, and then in that variables file we have a variable for the primary color, the primary second, that kind of stuff. So we will change the values in that file, and if it was being used correctly in the rest of the system, if the design system was built correctly, then it will take it, and it will be easy to work with. In that case, I do recommend, like if you have a master or a main theme, you use that one, you make it a starter kit, and then when you create your other themes, you use that starter kit as the initial point. And then you just change the variables, and then you're good to go.
Do we need to commit this back so we don't lose?
Yes, let's do it. Thank you. Yes?
Sorry, I know we're out of time, but very quickly, can you show us how to connect, like I said, a second component, like a car component, to this component? How you?
Yes. Okay, I can do it quickly. I will do it quickly. So don't try to follow. just look. And in any case, in the training manual, it is all explained. So you can look at it. Yes. So basically, what we can do here is I'm gonna do another component here, real quick, right, for my card. So this is going to be a card. Let me just copy over from the code I have somewhere. Yes. So I'm going to create a new file for the component YAML. So card.component YAML here. For this one, I'm going to do a couple of things. Oh, this looks very sad. So basically here I'm just adding some properties. Basically I'm saying that my my card is going to have a body, a title, sorry. I don't know why I didn't copy everything, but bear with me. Description. Here I'm just adding another one called class name, just for the test. I'm gonna delete it right now, honestly. We don't need it for seeing this. And then there are some slots, okay? So basically I'm saying there is going to be a header slot if I want to replace the full header. That's it. A body slot if I want to replace the full body. And a footer slot if I want to replace the full footer, right? With that, I have some props, some slots. Good. Now, what I'm going to do here is I will create another file for the twig, card twig. By the way, remember, there are some certificates, by the way. Okay. We have the card twig, so I'm just going to copy my twig as well. In this case, again, I will just copy it and explain it. So just give me a moment. This is it. So what I'm doing here is basically, I'm adding some classes here. I'm adding the div that will have the whole card, right? And then I'm defining some slots and HTML that I want. So as you can see, all of it is going to follow the same approach. I'm adding a block here in case I want to override the whole header section. But if I don't, then basically if I send the header variable, what I'm doing is I'm adding a div that has the class card image and that will print whatever the header variable has. That's what I have. So I'm doing the same thing for all those elements, for the header, for the body. Sorry, this is here. I don't need to be indenting all of this, but I think it is not going to work if I try to do it automatically. So that's why I'm trying there. In any case, there is that. We have our twig. We have the twig, we have the component YAML file, so we're defining the whole component. If now I want to make the paragraph use this, all I need to do is go to the whatever I'm printing here, this in, and see what is the template that is being used to call it. So in this case, this is that field. If I keep going up, I get here to a paragraph. And as you can see here, what is the template that is being used? It is the paragraph template from the paragraphs module. So what I will do is I will copy that one, and I will just make sure that I will rename it with an appropriate name. We have here a lot of options. We have the paragraph default, paragraph card default. In our case, we only want to override and call the card SDC if it is the card paragraph type, right? So the right option in this case will be the paragraph -- card, because that one will only target the paragraphs of types card. That's the way in which Drupal works. So I can do that and then just invoke my component. How will I do that part? Well, basically, I can come back to my code. I'm going to find a module. I'm almost there. Right. Modules, contrib, paragraphs, templates. I almost know it by heart, but you will check the thing. That's totally fine. And we can paste it in our templates folder. That's what I'm trying to do in here. So I'm just going to paste it in the root. That's totally fine. We shouldn't for organizations purposes, but we can. And then I'm going to rename it. So it is called paragraph -- card. And now in that paragraph dash dash card, where normally we're just printing the whole content, I can perfectly just change what I'm printing here. And what I can do is basically just instead of printing all of it, I can just call my my SDC. So if I am not going to pass over slots, I can do it with include. So I will do include, and then I pass the name of it. So it's the same process. In this case, this one is called DrupalCon colon card, and then that is the first parameter, and then the second one is going to be the variables I'm going to pass. So remember, there were a couple of variables. One of them was the header. I'm going to say this is the image. So the image is part of the content variable, and remember I told you the content is the one that allows us to print the formatted fields already. So all we need to do is put content dot and then the name of the field that I want. In this case, I think my field was called field card image. For the body, for example, I'm going to send content dot field descriptions. And then for the footer, I will send content dot field CTAs. I think those were the names of my elements. I'm still not sending the title, but remember I only defined these 3 fields. So if I want to include the title, for example, I could very well just add something extra here. I'm going to do it real quick. I'm going to set like a new variable called body. And set. And then inside of this, for example, I can add an h2 that is going to have content dot field card title, and for example, content field description. Sorry. Something like that. And then maybe I will send the body to the body field there. So what I'm doing here is basically I'm passing over all the variables I want. I'm organizing them as I want. And that's good enough. At this point, I should clear the cache. And if everything is fine and I didn't mess up, we should see the card. Which will still not look great, but at least we will see a change in the order and the markup. So let's see. Yeah, I messed up. An open parenthesis is not properly closed. It is in the paragraph card, so let's see it.
You include.
In include?
Yeah.
It is
like on line 56, the include, you need to close the parentheses.
Oh, no, I am closing it in the 60.
Oh.
Yeah.
What it is complaining?
It is. Oh, of course. So this one should be with double like that, because it is in just one line. So it is double curly braces. I think that's it. Let's see if it's really. Yeah, it was that. So now you can see we have the card image, we have the card title, and if I hadn't specified the limit of 600 pixels height, I will also see the rest of it. But that's what we have. Of course, at this point, we could configure inside building to not display the labels, for example, but I didn't do it yet, so that's why it still looks like that. But we have our elements there.
So if you had another paragraph that you wanted to use the slider thing in, but laid out differently, you would just make a new paragraph that pulls in that component.
Like light out the card differently?
Yeah, well,
I would
add a heading and a body copy above it or something.
above the card?
You just reuse that SDC piece in your new other paragraph.
Yes.
And then you swap it out.
Yes. you can invoke it and just send, for example, the slots with their new values, and that's fine. Okay. So we went super over time, but I hope it was useful. I don't know if you have any other questions. Commit. Right. Okay, so let's commit it. We should have been committing often. We didn't do it, so that's sad. But what I'm going to do for the commit is basically, I usually just do git status to see what is everything that I have there. You can do git add and then your elements. So in my case, if I add the composer JSON and the composer log, that is going to add the dependencies that I added to my site. And then if I add also this one, web themes custom, that basically adds all of the files that are part of the theme. My only issue is I think currently it is also adding the node modules. So let me, give me just 1 second to get rid of it. I will delete it because we don't want to push that. It will take forever. So I deleted it. I'm gonna open a new git ignore here. And I will also give you this link, so you can also check with my code. .git ignore. I will exclude the node modules here. I will add everything. So now I don't have the node modules there. That's perfect. And I can commit. So basically, what I want you to do is make sure you add a git ignore that has a node modules in there instead of the DrupalCon theme. And then git add dot and commit it. I'm going to say DrupalCon Portland 2024. We commit it. We're good. If you do git status, everything should be clean. And then we can push that. Git push origin main. And then you will have it. So in my case, if I go back to my repository here, you should see that there is a new commit here. And in that commit, you can see all the changes that we did. And see the card, and see the slider, and see all the code that I did. Okay, so if you want to check it out, there is it. So yeah, thank you so much. We're going to give you the certificates so you can start coming, or I can call them actually by name, right?
If you want to do
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
So I sign them as well.
I had just done a push earlier, so. And you said that you're going to share out the repo link?
Yes, it is. You can see the URL here. I gave him already. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very good.
Thank you.